Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Federation of Quebec Alzheimer's Society's online learning series for care interventions for people with dementia during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Shalisa Capre, and I am the first link nurse at the Alzheimer's Society of Ciboulet, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. Let's jump into our next topic on meals. So meals are a very important part of the day, not just for nutrition, they can also be social activities. Unfortunately, the person with neurocognitive disorder might have more trouble, having a quality meal, and that it might be harder for them to use cutlery. They might not know what to do with the food placed in front of them. They might not know how to get it to their mouth, either due to coordination issues or maybe just issues with orientation and attention. A person might start eating less, they might start eating more. This can affect their weight and overall health. They might, while eating, try to put too much food into their mouth at once or try to swallow without chewing and possibly choke. They might even try to eat inedible items. So we're going to talk about strategies for helping people, helping people with their meals today. But again, we want to focus on autonomy. We want to help the person do whatever they can for themselves to be as independent as possible in eating their meals and to, maintain those functions for as long as possible. Independence is very important, again, not just for maintaining function, but also for preserving self-esteem and that sense of self-sufficiency that is so important emotionally for people. So let's get into a few strategies. So first of all, we can keep the person involved in their meal by adapting the meal to them. Simplify what's in front of them. Put out one dish at a time. Give them simple instructions, So for example, if a person's having a soup and a main course, maybe put the soup out alone, because if you put those two dishes those two dishes out together, it could be a little disorienting for the person in that they might take the fork for their meat and use it on their soup, or it might just be too much information in front of them and they'll get distracted. So simplify the presentation and simplify the task. So one soup with just the spoon you need for that soup to start. Provide help when needed. Sometimes, it's just a question of putting the spoon in the person's hand and then their reflex will take over and start feeding themselves. You don't necessarily have to do everything for the person. Sometimes it's just about giving them a simple layout to help them get started. Asking what the person prefers to eat, whether you're asking them or family members, can also help make sure that they eat enough. However, it's normal to see changes as well. So a person might decide one day that they don't like this food anymore. They might tell you they never liked it. It's normal for your sense of taste to change with age already. People might gravitate to things that are a bit more sweet. Sometimes they might start to like certain textures more than others. So it's normal for it to change. The important thing is that the person is eating enough. Sometimes they might also be saying they might think they don't like anything anymore because they're remembering a time from their past where they didn't like that thing and they're just in another time. So the reasons can be different. It's always best to support their choices and preferences and give them, again, that kind of agency. So there are a lot of adapted dishes out there, bowls that are a little wider with flatter bottoms, no spill glasses, using non-skid surfaces or placemats. You can also favor the person's autonomy even when they can't use cutlery by offering them finger foods, things that they can pick up. That can help them to eat more independently, even though they've lost a certain capacity. And we want to, again, support that sense of independence. Small, frequent meals or nutritious snacks may be a good alternative for somebody that's not eating a lot in one go, in one meal anymore. And still make sure that they get enough nutrition throughout the day. A special note on oral health. Again, we always want to be mindful, comprehensive in how we look at the person's health. They don't just have Alzheimer's, often there are other things going on. A lot of people who are seniors have dentures, and sometimes these dentures don't quite fit properly anymore. Um, Things like cavities and gum disease can also cause discomfort in the mouth. So it's important to be attentive when a person's appetite changes, not to just assume that it could be their Alzheimer's disease or another neurocognitive disorder, but it might be linked to another health problem. So routine health checkups, including oral health checkups, are still very important for anybody. So, like I said, we want to simplify tasks with people, and we also want to give them proper cues. So sometimes this is eating with them, facing them, so that they are seeing us eat. Sometimes we want to exaggerate our movements as well, really like, not to be scary, but, really show yourself piercing that steak with your fork so that they get the idea as well. Like I said before, sometimes they might need a little bit of physical help. So again, putting the right utensil in their mouth, maybe even guiding their hand to their mouth. But then after a couple times, it becomes more automatic for them. They get their reflex kicks in. So again, we never want to go beyond what help that they need. If they are really struggling with tasks, however, you might need to help them. Some people need you to bring the utensil to them always. Um, but always be respectful when you do it, in that you're still trying to preserve that element of, their choice and their preference. And asking them, well, would you like a bit of your meat now? Would you like a little bit of your vegetables now? Would you like a drink? Would you like help with that? Even just offering help in general, we should always be saying, would you like some help? I can give you a hand with that. Always being gentle when we have to assist. Never making assumptions that the person will, necessarily want us to help in the first place or accept us putting food in their face. So always go slowly, check in with the client, wait for them to accept you. So like I said, sometimes when we have too many things on the table, that can be very distracting for a person and affect their concentration on their actual meal. So sometimes it's when we put too many items in front of them, it's just too much information. Sometimes it's when we put a lot of things on the table. A lot of us have centerpieces and stuff like that, and this can affect the person as well. When we have, for example, a plate full of fruit, sometimes the person might think, well, that's real food as well. And that's where we get into people sometimes taking in edible substances. You also want to keep the atmosphere as calm as possible. Sometimes having a little music is fine. Some people do eat in front of TV, but if you see the person is, just focusing on the TV and ignoring their plate, well, you can, again, with their permission, always get their permission first, say, oh, actually, I was thinking some music might be nice. Or, oh, I wanted to have a chat with you. Do you mind if I turn off the TV for a minute? Have that little chat, and then bring their attention back to their food without turning the TV back on. It's great. And again, always try to be flexible. Sometimes a person, especially in group settings, might not be used to eating at a certain time. Try and be mindful of that. Again, learn about their routines and try to integrate them as much as possible. So sometimes we have the issue of the person refusing their food or just spitting it out even when the food gets into their mouth. Sometimes it's a question of like. Again, sometimes it could be discomfort, so always be careful. If a person doesn't normally spit out the food and all of a sudden you put the spoon in their mouth and they're spitting it out like they're uncomfortable, it might not necessarily be the food itself. It could be. Food could be too hot, too cold, not what they like. It could also be physical discomfort, something going on with their gums, or maybe it's finger sores, who knows. Always important to check up on changes whenever a person's behavior changes suddenly, especially. Sometimes too, the person is just, we gave them a bite and we think they swallowed it, but they didn't necessarily. Sometimes that swallowing response is not as automatic in the person. Sometimes it needs to be stimulated. Sometimes you need to verbally remind them to swallow. Sometimes you can offer them a little drink. Sometimes you can, um, sometimes you can just give a little light touch. Sometimes that can help somebody a bit more advanced at just uh, that swallowing reflex. So we've talked in other places about using color contrast. Sometimes, again, we're trying to draw the person's attention. So having something like a colorful plate against a lighter colored table can help bring the person's attention to that plate. Or same thing for their cups. Again, sometimes finger foods can be useful here too. You know, things that are easier to pick up that don't require so much precision with a utensil. Sandwiches, stuff like that. Sandwiches are good too for the same reason, just maintaining autonomy. In general, it's easy for people to pick up. Sometimes they can even participate in making their sandwich. So being mindful again about the environment the person is eating in. Is it's too distracting? If it's overstimulating, it can make the task harder for the person. Some people, for a lot of people eat in groups. Eating, like I said, can be a very social activity, and some people may not respond to a very big group. So it's important to be mindful of that as well. If a person is having trouble with their food, this is the importance of adapting their meals, because it's not just their ability to do it. If they're not able to do it, it's not just their physical ability to do the task, it's a frustration that comes with when a task is too difficult. You know, and they might just give up and not eat. There might be that sense of embarrassment, especially around other people, that, oh, I'm having trouble and everyone will notice, so I'm just going to pretend I'm not going to eat. It does happen. There is a logic sometimes to these behaviors. It's important to also give time to the person to eat. You know, a lot of people require just, they can't eat for themselves. It just takes them more time. So, you know, it's important to give them that time and not feel too rushed, and not let them feel too rushed. Right. So again, even when the person does need a lot of help eating, always check in with them first. And if a person is a little restless, they can't sit through an entire meal. Again, sometimes there are things we can do with our environment to make it a bit more calming. Sometimes watching TV does help the person stay in place. It really depends on the person. Sometimes it's okay for them to get up and come back. So, you know, again, maybe tailor exactly what a meal time looks like for that person. And we also want to recognize our own, you know, be aware of our own frustration. It can be frustrating because, again, you know, this person needs to eat. You don't want to neglect their need to eat, but, you know, it can be hard when the person is spitting out food and just wants to get up and is pushing away. Again, be mindful of the reasons for these behaviors. Sometimes there's something else to address, and never take it personal on yourself. So we talked about presenting only one food item at a time, not rushing the meal, you know, taking breaks where needed. And here we have a note about not, you know, being careful with introducing unfamiliar routines. A person might not like to eat breakfast, but it doesn't mean they're not going to be hungry during the morning, just hungry later in the morning. It could just be that they're not used to having breakfast. They're used to just heading to work and then having a snack at around 10. So again, learn about their routines and try to accommodate them as much as possible. Again, going back to meals being a very social activity, a lot of people, you know, in their family might be used to being the person who cooks or the person who sets the table. So that's another way to engage the person meaningfully during an activity, is to let them participate in the meal setup. And that can also make it feel a bit more rewarding, the sense that I helped prepare, whether that's, you know, depending on the setting, them helping out a little in the kitchen, or just, setting the table, or just like going around and we ask the person to, oh, can you put this fork here? Again, depending on their capacities, involving them in whatever way, even if it seems small to us, can be very important to the person. So a little note on the late stage of these diseases. People later on in Alzheimer's and other neurocognitive disorders can often lose their appetite a lot. A lot of their appetite, they are maybe completely unable to feed themselves at this point, and they might even have trouble swallowing. This is where things like thickened liquids might come in, pureeing their meals. The important thing to focus on here is quality of life rather than, trying to have the perfect balanced diet. You might want to accommodate the person who's only eating the sugar. Again, depends where they are, it depends where they are in their disease. But again, we are looking for, we're talking kind of like a palliative setting at this point. So if you're really just going for that sugary food, we don't want to force the issue. Sometimes we can have little tricks, and this is for anybody who's going for more sugary foods throughout the disease. Sometimes we can substitute in fruits, right? Instead of the chocolate pudding, can we, have a more healthy alternative, a yogurt or something. So yeah, especially for, even again, going back to somebody in an earlier stage, if they're always going through, always looking for the cookies, always looking for the cakes, sometimes we can bring in, especially in home, sometimes we can just have some fruit lying around, again, depending on what they can have, apple slices, applesauce without sugar, things like that. A little note on straws. Sometimes they help people, but they can exacerbate problems with swallowing, so be wary of that as well. All right, so again, thank you for being here. If ever you are looking for more information, please reach out to us. We are happy to help. And again, have a very, very nice day.